May the peace and grace of God be upon you. Today, I want to share with you my personal testimony that changed my life forever. I hope that this account can touch your hearts and renew your hope, reminding you that even in the most difficult moments, God is with us, strengthening and guiding us in every step of the journey. What I'm about to share with you happened to me and marked me for the rest of my life here on earth. My name is Roger. I am 49 years old, married, with 2 beautiful children and a wonderful wife who supported and helped me through this period of great tribulation that involved our whole family. 7 years ago, I found myself facing a health problem so serious that it shook my faith and literally placed me in God's hands. I was working at AT&T in New York when I began to notice that I was hearing less through my left ear, especially when answering the phone. I mentioned this to a colleague who called a specialist and scheduled an appointment. However, I was reluctant to go as I hated doctors and hospitals, but I ended up going very reluctantly. The doctor examined me and, noticing something strange in my left ear, requested an MRI. With the results in hand, I returned to the office with my wife. From that day on, my life would take a completely unexpected turn, as until then I was a healthy person dreaming and making plans. But that day, I discovered I had 3 tumors in my head, and one of them had already extinguished my hearing in the left ear, and nothing more could be done to recover it. And the worst part was that another sizable tumor, also on the left side, was lodged below the cerebellum, and the doctor said that accessing it to remove it was practically impossible, and that therefore I would not have much time left. But I felt that God had not yet determined the end of my days here on earth, and with this hope in my heart, I sought the opinion of other specialists in Long Beach where I lived, and one of them, looking at the imaging exams, said to me, "You know you have cancer, that it is impossible to operate, and that's why you will die." We left the office, my wife and I sat on the curb and cried a lot, for it seemed that my death was already determined by the world. What they did not know is that we serve the living God who can do all things and who holds the keys to life and death. But I confess that there were moments when even I doubted this, and I began to prepare myself for death. One day we told the whole story to our pastor, who arranged for another pastor to accompany us to the city and consult with other doctors who perhaps were more capable and could offer a solution. We went to the city to consult with the best specialist in the area who accepted my health plan at the time, United Healthcare. But when he saw the exams, he shook his head and said he was not capable of performing such a risky surgery. However, he knew a doctor specialized in head and neck surgery who would be the only doctor in New York capable of performing such a surgery, but who did not accept health insurance, and he told me that the cost of the surgery would be around $100,000. Hearing that, I was outraged, and I told him that even if I sold everything I had, I would not be able to gather half of that amount. So, with my wife and the pastor who had accompanied me by my side, I asked to go back home, where I would await death, for I saw that nothing more could be done. But when we have exhausted all our human possibilities, God acts, and at that moment, my pastor had the idea of going to the United Healthcare headquarters in New York, for they would have to find a solution to the problem, and even though I did not believe it was possible, I ended up accepting, and off we went. Upon arriving at the company, we spoke with the General Director of Hospitalization, who we discovered was the only person who could do something in my favor, and when he attended to us, God began to change my story. After analyzing the exams and realizing the seriousness of the case, the director surprised us by saying that there are situations in life where man is limited, but that there is someone greater who can do all things, and that I should have faith because God would not forsake me. I was shocked, for I was prepared to hear bad news, which is what normally happens in circumstances like these. But that doctor spoke to me about Jesus, and there I felt that I was not alone. After a few minutes of conversation with that doctor, whom we discovered was also a Christian, I heard the promise that from that day on, he would stand in front of my battle, using all possible means for my healing. And so it happened. That blessed brother moved heaven and earth on my behalf, which made it possible for me to be examined by more than 12 specialists in New York over a period of more than 14 months. But the diagnosis was always the same. None of them would operate on me, as it would be a high-risk surgery. Time was running out for me when the doctor brother asked me to undergo an evaluation at the cancer hospital, saying that the report would be decisive for my future, and so it was done. Then, after almost 2 years of consultations and discouragements, finally, a medical board at the hospital said that my case was operable, but that only there, with its team of specialists, would it be possible to perform the surgery, but that the hospital was not affiliated with United Healthcare. Armed with the report, I returned to the doctor brother, who told me he would take it to the United Healthcare Board of Directors meeting and see what could be done. Somehow, I knew that God was already acting, and that soon the struggle would cease. After a few days, I was called to meet with the doctor because he already had a definitive answer. I invited the pastor once again to accompany us to that meeting, which would be, in one way or another, the end of my pilgrimage. And when we arrived at the office, we were surprised again. The United Healthcare Board had not agreed for the surgery to be done at the cancer hospital, determining that it be done at the United Healthcare Hospital itself, and that they would hire that doctor who had initially asked me for $100,000 for the surgery. That from that day on, they would cover everything necessary, as well as post-surgical monitoring, ICU ambulances, any exams that were necessary. And then my wife, the pastor, and I cried tears of joy, for God had blessed us. However, the journey would still take a few months until the day of the surgery, and there were so many exams that I would not be able to enumerate or describe them. In the first contact with the surgeon, the seriousness of my situation was very clear, for he described my case as if I had won the Mega Millions alone. But on the contrary, such was the level of difficulty of the surgery, telling me about the risks and the permanent sequelae I would have. Brothers and sisters, how hard it was to hear all that. But I was in God's hands and with the best specialist, in a surgery that would count on a multidisciplinary team taking turns over 22 hours, but even so, there was a risk of death. He considered facial paralysis on the left side, total deafness in the left ear, possible total paralysis of the left side of the body, and acute labyrinthitis due to the lack of the left ear. That was if everything went well, and I had to sign a liability waiver saying I was aware. I then asked how long I would live if I did not have the surgery, and the answer was 1 year and 6 months, for although the tumours were not malignant, they were growing rapidly and would soon affect areas of the brain that control vision, speech, and motor coordination. At that moment, I prayed to God and made a final request to the surgeon to spend Christmas and New Year with my family, as I might never have the chance to do so again. He agreed and scheduled the surgery for January 6, 2008. Brothers and sisters, imagine how difficult that period was in the life of my family. My eldest son would get married in March of the following year, and perhaps I would not be there, but God, in His infinite mercy, took care of me and my whole family. Finally, the most difficult hour I had ever experienced had arrived, and there I was with my beloved wife, minutes before the surgery began. We prayed to God and said goodbye, but it was not a farewell, but a see you later, for days before the surgery, in my farewell at the church where I congregated, God used a pastor who did not know me or my problem, and he came down from the pulpit and came to me in the pew, saying that God was closing the door to death that night. So, brothers and sisters, I went into surgery knowing that I would not die, for God had spoken and I claimed the blessing. Many may question, would it not have been easier to be spared so much suffering since God would not allow my death in that situation? I can only say what my pastor read to me. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Who am I to question God? Everything in our lives has a purpose. At that time, I was only 42 years old, and only by God's mercy am I still here. I was afraid, yes, as I still am, when I remember all that I went through, but many of us are stubborn, with hard hearts, even within the church, and sometimes we need a shake-up. We need a stronger wind to blow in our lives to understand God's great love for us. The surgery lasted 23 hours. I had 2 cardiac arrests during that time, but to the glory of God, I am still here. There were some sequelae, facial paralysis, total deafness in the left ear, acute labyrinthitis. But God spared me from all the other consequences that the doctor feared. And today, I walk, see, speak, hear with the ear that God gave me, and I am happy, leading an almost normal life. I only miss working, but God has been with me and my family every day, and I hope that with this testimony I can help you, my brother, you who are perfect, but think that there is always something missing to be happy. Be happy for breathing, for the sun that rises every day, and for God's mercy in your life. And remember, men may give up on us, but God never deceives us.